Hello, everybody. My name is Barry Johnson, and welcome back to another edition of Studio Talk. Okay, today's is going to be a pretty serious subject, so I'm going to tone it down in my vivaciousness and talk about it. And I'll be honest with you, it's a hard subject to talk about because one, it's very subjective. Two, it's hard to give you illustrations. Okay, so I can only touch on this theoretically, my perception, things like that. Understand that my take on this is my take, okay? I don't have the technical expertise to be able to explain to all of you people in a technical aspect what the differences are, but I can tell you what my experience has been experiencing different levels of what I'm about ready to talk about. And that is a question I got recently on what are the characteristics that we can appreciate and gain from and want to invest in of higher quality conversion compared to lower quality conversion, which typically equates to um, how much money you're spending. Historically, that's definitely been the case. Now, I have a video out there basically saying I think it was 2021 when I did the video, so it'd be last year, but that basically saying that there's really not that much of a difference today in conversion between one interface and the next one. All these manufacturers and technology has come up so well that you can get some pretty incredible conversion for not a lot of money these days. So, does that mean that there's no difference? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean at the end of the day, and here's a point that all of you really, really, really should take into consideration, especially if you've not jumped into the waters of, let's just call them high end interfaces, okay, for lack of better terms. There's a lot more things that come associated with a high end interface, aka an expensive one. It's not just conversion. Now, if you go back 15 years or more, it was almost all conversion. That was almost everything you looked at. But today, there's a lot of different things I talk about in that video. I'll touch on briefly here. And that's the quality of the microphone inputs, the quality of the physical housing, the quality of the manufacturing, the stability, the amount of effort and time they're going to put into investing into drivers and keeping those up to date on more expensive, the amount of digital I/O that you can have between AES, SPDIF, light pipe, as well as Ethernet, Dante. What else am I thinking? Pro Tools for HDX, Digilink connector, AVB, all various types of digital I/O that you may want to work with. So you're getting into a lot of those things when you're spending more money. Most of you folks out there are not going to need most of those features, with the exception of most likely probably light pipe. You'll need to do that if you want to expand your microphone inputs. Oftentimes that's a better way to do it for most people. Not the only way, but a good way to do it. And so when you're thinking about conversion today, I think it all boils down to clarity. What you'll find with the very best conversion out there is that ultimately, is that conversion going to make a difference overall with what the end user listens to? In my opinion, probably not. Probably not, because there's been a lot of really great songs written or recorded on what, by today's standards, by most people's standards, some pretty inferior equipment. Um, and and so it's not going to do that. What it can help you do is make decisions. What you're going to find with the very best conversion is you're going to hear things that you never heard before. Back in the day, it would literally be, I mean, the difference was so significant. It was like, oh my gosh, it was in your face. It was so noticeable. It was literally like taking a set of monitors and putting a small blanket over them. And you had been mixing that way for a long time. And then you upgrade to a nicer interface and you pull that blanket back off, allowing some of the clarity, the definition of the tweeter and other things to get through, some upper mid range. Then it opened up your mixes. Things you thought you'd done great before, you realize with better conversion, you go back and start listening to again. I'm like, holy crap, I would have never let that slide if I'd heard that, right? Most of you, for those of you guys that may be somewhat older, you know the transition going from old tube type TVs just to 720 HD. And then from 720 to 1080p was another jump. I wouldn't say a huge one, but by the time we got to 4K, that changed the whole viewing experience for all of us. All you got to do is go back and watch on YouTube or something, go back and watch a football game from back in the day. For me, it's not that far back, but for you, it probably seems like an eternity, depending on how old you are. Um, but you're going to see that the clarity of the picture and the definition of things was not there. Did they capture the football game and did everybody enjoy it at the time because it was the only thing we knew? Yeah. But as we started developing better resolutions and higher resolutions and came out beyond mono to stereo to 5.1 to 7.1 to whoever knows .1 it is today for surround sound, these are evolutionary processes that we go through that in the moment we don't always realize that what we're using, that there could be so much better. And that's kind of what it is with high-end conversion. Back then, it was a huge difference. Today, it's a difference. It's, in my opinion, it's not a huge one. I think when people think it's a huge one, it's they bought into, most likely, in my opinion, the fanboyism of buying that piece of gear. They've invested all this money, whether it's a Larrivee, Prism, Lynx Audio, I think it's Lilo, whatever, some of those high-end mastering grade conversions. And then you've got the professional everyday conversion that most people need when they need more than a few inputs for mastering and such. And you've got the Focusrite Red series, not to be confused with the lesser expensive Focusrite, which quite frankly is quite good and in its price range. But there's a day and night difference between those interfaces and you get into the Red series. The Red series are incredibly good, as well as RME. RME makes them outstanding. Antelope Audio has always been known for making incredible converters. Drivers, not so much, but I hear they've gotten a good handle on that these days. I'm looking forward to, I actually contacted Antelope Audio to see if they'd want to send me an interface to review because I'm very curious to see how they're doing today. I'm going to stop for a second because I got to take a drink. All right, so now that I'm back from taking that drink. So anyway, when you're talking about this conversion, it's really a clarity. It's a 3D dimension. It's a stereo image, okay? The stereo image becomes wider, becomes more defined. Your ability to get in and do precision things is so much more precise because you can hear things so much better. I can tell you that after I did that video saying converters don't matter as much anymore, I bought an Avid Carbon interface, which I will tell you, I've owned a lot of really high-end professional interfaces over the years. And without a doubt, it is the best conversion I've ever heard in that price range. The very best that I've heard. Now, I'm not suggesting that it's on par with Prism or Larrivee or even the Lynx Audio Lila. I think it's called Lila or Lilo, one of those. It's a 2-channel mastering interface that they have, or analog to digital converter, or digital to analog converter, I should say. And so that was it was the best that I'd ever heard. Okay, so here are some of the high-end interfaces I've owned in the past. Okay, the Lynx Aurora 8 and Lynx Aurora 16, not the LN. I've not owned the LN. I've used the LN, but the original Lynx Aurora and Aurora 16. Of course, the DigiDesign 192, the DigiDesign, the current version of Avid's interfaces. I've owned both an 8-channel I/O as well as an Omni. I currently own, I'm not going to say a mid-level RME, so I'm not going to do that, but I have owned a high-end RME interface in the past. The only reason I got rid of that is I needed to go Pro Tools HD at the time. And so I moved away from it. If I were in the native world, RME is actually incredible. And so I've owned, there's more, for whatever reason, I can't think, but there's a few more that I've owned that I would call in the high end. And they were certainly the top shelf. Oh, an Apogee Symphony, both the AD and the DA16Xs. I actually used those up until about 8 or 9 months ago, and I recently sold them. We're using those for all of my hardware inserts with Pro Tools HD Native. And so what you're going to find, so anyway, the Carbon was great. Now, I'm not trying to sell you on the Carbon because if you watched any of my videos, you know that I absolutely really love Pro Tools, but I hate Avid as a company. I hate their practices. And there's a good chance I'll move away from that interface just because I want to get far, far, far away of Avid as a company. Okay. I'm not a fan of that company. I really hope they'll turn things around because I've used it for decades at this point. But I did buy Studio One and some others. Anyway, that's not the topic of this conversation. So what you're going to get is you're going to be able to make decisions now. Where it can make a difference in the end result is quite frankly not the AD, but more the D to A. Okay, because that's when you're making mixed decisions, not in the A to D, but in the D to A, in the digital to analog conversion. And so that matters if you're going out to a summing box. Okay. If you're just mixing in the box, your DA is going to matter because of what you're hearing through your monitors, right? You're making decisions through your monitors, so it's impacting you that way. Your digital to analog is having a huge impact on your hardware inserts, but although I would say both of them matter, but I would say today even more the digital to analog part, because back in the day, when you'd run out round trip to hardware inserts, you would possibly lose a little bit of the signal quality because you're going out and back in again. Today, that's just not an issue and hasn't been for a long time. That's just more the history behind it. And so if you're in the market to try to upgrade your converters, here's what I'll say to you. If you're tight on budget, I'm going to tell you upgrading your conversion to, I would say, let's just call semi-pro or, the second tier of interfaces, and that's what you own today. I think you'd get your money more wisely spent going in other directions. Now, if you've already acquired everything you need for your studio and you're really trying to put together the best you can do for the money you have, and it's not causing you to get in debt or anything like that, then by all means, go ahead and upgrade to a nicer interface. That's kind of my situation. Believe it or not, you folks out there actually paid for that Carbon. When I bought it, the money I made from YouTube actually paid for it. Now, it didn't pay for it in a month. It paid for it over time, but it paid for it. I think I bought that on using a firm on Reverb with 0% interest. I think over 18 months or something like that, but I paid it off in like 4 months. So anyway, the conversion on it is outstanding. Now, the one that Motu also makes some really great interfaces, although they're due for a refresh. The versions they came out, they're about 5 to 8 years old. They're kind of due for a refresh out there, I think, in my opinion. But then again, that's another point that I just thought of. You're not seeing refreshes as frequently today as you used to back in the past. And that's good for all of us. That basically means that there's only so much you're going to be able to do with this, probably. There's only so far we're going to go where it's actually going to make a difference. Because again, I'll go back to my opening statement, and I'll use this to end this statement. At the end of the day, conversion is not going to make or break your song. I didn't say your recording. I said your song. Remember, your song's got to be great. If your song's not great, and if it's not well recorded, and if it's not well played, then there's no chance. All the conversion in the world is not going to make a bit of difference there, okay? But what it will do as you progress is help you to mix better, okay, in small details. Going from a $1,500 interface to a $3,500 interface is going to have marginal differences in conversion. Other things I talked about, different story. Okay. Obviously, there's justification to spend that much money. And those of us who have done it understand and know what the benefit of owning higher quality conversion is. And it's not, or higher quality interfaces. We always said converters in the past. Today, it's more proper to call it interface because it's so much more than just the conversion, as I mentioned before. So if you like the things I talk about on this channel, please do me a favor. Hit that like. Nope, it's on this side. That like, that subscribe, and that notification bell helps you know when I got new videos out, and I appreciate if you watch them. Now, I really appreciate if you go down in the comment section and share what your thoughts are. Tell me what you think about this. If you think I'm completely wrong, tell me I'm wrong. If you've had some similar experiences, let's talk about that too, okay? But until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day. Bye-bye.